The birds chirp in the distance by the water as a lone man sits on a foggy bridge. He talks about losing Diana unexpectedly, even when in his mind they were invincible. Diana, a dark-haired, beautiful woman sitting alone in a bus, smiles and talks about letting love go. And if it returns, it was yours to begin with. She continues, saying that she knew she was David's. They met in high school. David was a senior while Diana was a freshman. He would drive her and her friend to and from school. He proposed to her on the pier at Paradise Cove when she was 19, and even though her parents were against it, saying they didn't know each other, David told her that life should be about taking risks. They ended up eloping. David graduated from architecture school and managed to get a job at a small firm while Diana supported him as a real estate agent. He spent most of his time sketching his dream house. She would lay in his lap and stare at him working. They also had their little differences, like every couple does, like the fact that he used to throw his dirty clothes in places other than the laundry hamper. They fought, with her slapping him and then apologizing, but it always ended up with them making love. That's how much they loved each other. They didn't have much money, so sometimes for fun they would go around town and David would show her architecture of the buildings he liked. Sometimes Diana would ask the question, "Why are we at a car wash?" Diana found a perfect land by the ocean in Santa Monica, and they agreed to get a loan to build it, and then the recession hit. Diana didn't make a sale for months and David got laid off. What's worse is that the bank asked for a demand note. If they failed to keep up with payments, the bank would seize their assets, their house. David borrowed $5,000 from his father, but it wasn't nearly enough. They needed $50,000. One night, he wakes Diana up, telling her he has an idea. They go to the local casino, gambling in hopes to multiply the little money they have. Diana walks around and comes across a shop for rich folks inside the casino. She steals some of the chocolate that is there for the guests of the shop, and finds a sophisticated-looking man catching her in the act. But she simply smiles meekly. A few moments later, she rakes through the expensive dresses and puts one against her body, pulling down the straps of her white shirt to see how the dress would look around her shoulders. The same man who caught her stealing chocolate comes up behind her, complimenting her and advises her to buy it. But she has no money. After hearing this, he offers to buy it for her. However, Diana rejects his offer and walks away after telling him that it is the dress that is on sale, not her. He surprisingly smiles. Diana skips back to her husband, who is fiercely betting on a game of dice. He kisses her passionately, telling her he is already over $9,000. Before his next move, he brings the dice up to Diana's lips and tells her to kiss them. They kiss after winning even more money. Diana sees the man from the dress shop watching her and she averts her eyes, kissing David again. The man seems to get increasingly interested, as per his mischievous smile. Back at home, the happy couple counts their money and Diana rolls around in the bed full of cash. Their total is a hefty $25,040. It is intriguing to him that they managed to make this much just from $5,000. And only within an hour. Diana calls David to bed and tells her she loves him. She clarifies further, saying she loves him even without the money. They make passionate love among the heaps of dollars. The next day, David and Diana go back to the casino to bet more. However, it seems as if their luck has run out. They lose every bet they've made. Unfortunately, they've run down to $4,100. They toss a coin to decide if they should still go for it. Heads for quit and tails for continuing. David tosses and the coin lands on tails. They bet all their money on red, but as the wheels turn, David bets back on fourth on red and black, finally settling on red. Much to their dismay, they lose all their money as the dice lands on black. David caresses her hair as she sobs against his hand. They quietly walk around the casino and find a crowd watching a more elite game of bets. David asks who the man playing is and one of the audience tells him that's John Gage, a rich billionaire. He is the same man who offered to buy Diana that dress. John sees Diana and David and calls out to them. He asks if he can borrow Diana for good luck. She is reluctant about it, but the crowd and David convince her. It's not like the broke couple has anything to lose now. He bets $100,000 just like that, which makes Diana smile nervously. He needs a 9 to win, but unfortunately he loses. Very coolly though. It is obvious from his face that he does not consider losses as losses. John asks Diana if she likes card but finds out she is more interested in dice. So next, John bets $1 million on a game of dice, hoping Diana will find it interesting. He has her be in charge of this game and simply asks her to roll the dice and get a 7. But before she can roll, he tells her she is forgetting something. He means to tell her that she should kiss the dice before playing. Diana throws the dice with all her strength and the dice rolls to a 7. The crowd erupts with cheers. David, who is watching, laughs widely at his wife's luck and hugs the person next to him. John asks if he should quit now, to which Diana says that she should and walks back to David. She hugs him as he compliments her. John follows them and introduces himself to David, who introduces himself back. John asks the couple if they are staying at the hotel, but they are just about to leave. Hearing this, John asks them to stay a fight, tells them he will get a room for them because the least he can do. The room he gets the couple is luxurious to say the least, with automatic curtains and a lot of space to move around. As the loving couple is hugging, there is a knock on the door. Mr. Gage has sent up a present for Diana and invites them to his suite at night where he is hosting a party. David opens the gift to find the dress Diana was looking at in the shop. The dress costs $5,000. David's expressions are a little insecure as he notices the growing interest of John Gage and his wife. At the party at night, the dressed-up couple shyly walks around before dancing together lovingly. John gazes at Diana from afar, and as the party progresses, he spends time with the couple, drinking and talking together. Later on, after the guests have left, David and John play a game of pool while Diana watches from the sideline. John talks about David having something he can't have, which means love. John calls that a bit of a cliche, and goes on to test it. He has David suppose that he would give him $1 million for one night with his wife. David and Diana stare at him dumbfounded. The atmosphere is tense as both the couple reply to the hypothetical offer with "I'd tell you to go to hell." John presses on, asking what if there was actual money involved, and tells them to think it over. But the couple tells them they are sure, and John gives up, telling them they've proved their point, that real love cannot be bought. Before leaving for a meeting, he asks Diana for a dance with David's permission. But David does not permit it, which John understands, as he says he wouldn't want to part with her either. Later that night, the couple tosses and turns, but doesn't seem to get sleepy. Diana talks about the deal John proposed. At first it seems ludicrous to even talk about it, but she tells him she would do it for him, for the money that would secure their future. After all, it's just her body, not her mind or her heart that she's giving. They contemplate it while talking about the people they have slept with before they got married. Luckily, they are able to laugh about it. Diana tells him that they won't have to say a single word about it for the rest of their lives. The next morning, David calls his old friend and lawyer, called Jeremy, and asks him to close a deal for him. He gives him the details of how John has offered him and his wife $1 million for one night with her. Jeremy drafts up an agreement for one night with plausible clauses that protect the reliability of the deal. The agreement is very meticulous, even stating the couple's safety if John were to die during that night. David, with all his insecurity, bids his wife goodbye for the night, and as the men leave, it's only John and Diana in the room. Downstairs, Jeremy and David sit beside a fountain at a fancy restaurant, and Jeremy consoles his very quiet friend. David, who cannot bear the thought of his wife with John, runs up the hotel, banging on the door of John's suite. The housekeeper opens up. Seems as if John and Diana have evacuated from the room. The maid tells David they are up at the helicopter and he rushes up. But he is too late. The helicopter has already taken flight. Inside the helicopter, John takes Diana to his personal yacht. She enters inside the luxurious room and gets into a beautiful dress and heels laid out for her. She showers and continues wearing makeup, while her husband, David, sweaty and anxious, walks around the gambling house, lost and alone. Later that night, Diana walks around the yacht to slow piano music. She sees John outside and goes up to him. He calls her to him and buttons her dress properly. He wants to show her something, and as he says this, he presses the button and the lights on the yacht turn off. He romantically stares at her and attempts to tell her that if she was his, he would never share her. She stops him from judging David. Diana tells him that she cannot be bought, and spending the night together does not mean he has bought her. John has a mischievous glint in his eyes as he offers to toss a coin to decide if they should really spend the night together, or if he should turn the boat around and drop her back to her husband. The coin lands, and he spends the night with her. The next day, David sits inside the hotel room, continuously opening and closing the curtains. Diana walks in after all night and they walk towards each other, hugging and sighing with relief. He wipes her lipstick off vigorously and they kiss, telling each other they love one another. They return to their usual life, with Diana thinking that this is the end of it, like a dream. At the office of the mortgage company, the couple gets the news that their property has been seized by another party. David makes a fuss at the office and storms out. David seems to be lost in his own thoughts, even after going home. Diana calls him out to help her in the garden as David asks her what a griffon is, a name he saw in her stuff, on a box of matches. He confesses to Diana that he is not able to forget about what happened, and maybe if they talk, he would be able to. Diana tells him that Griffon is a boat, and that John took her there. But she does not want to talk about it any further, and it annoys her when David presses on. David sees Diana's bag laying around in their room and starts looking through it. He smiles as he sees an old picture of them. But what he finds next is John Gage's card with his number on it. He goes to Diana, who just kept the phone back in place. David questions her about who she was talking to, and as she raises her voice, frustrated, he slaps the phone out of her hand. She asks what is wrong with him, and he shows her the card he found in her wallet. She claims she did not put it there, but he jealously doubts her, stating that she cannot stop thinking about him. In order to make something right, Diana finds out the name of the man who bought their property. Turns out, it is John Gage who bought it. Diana goes to meet with him angrily, and interrupts a dinner that he is having. and flips over the tablecloth. They take the conversation outside and Diana asks to buy the property back. He refuses to and instead asks her to work for him. She tells him she hates him and would never do it, but he thinks she doesn't actually despise him. Diana comes home and gets some wine out. David asks her where she has been and she starts off by telling him she met Gage. Before she can get another word in, he throws the bottle of wine against the fridge. Seeing his jealousy, Diana tries storming out, but David keeps wanting to know what happened on the boat. He pesters her about it until she tells him that she did have pleasure with John, but he asks her if it was the good kind. After forcing her for an answer, she answers with a yes. He bangs on the door with anger and then leaves her crying. David goes to his friend Jeremy's house and tells him about what happened. Diana calls Jeremy and asks him to tell David that he can keep the money. A few weeks pass, and Diana gets the news that the recession has ended. Her manager tells her there's a guy who wants to buy a house for $10 million. But after peeking out, Diana recognizes the man to be no other than John Gage. Her boss forces her to work on this case, and after much persuasion, she agrees. In the car, on the way to show John a house, he calls Diana a beautiful woman, but she averts any sort of personal discussion. Inside the house, John asks why she hasn't been returning his calls. It is evident that he is not really interested in buying a house. He is more interested in having a conversation with Diana. They go to the next house on the list. Turns out, it is John's house already. He asks her what's missing and she says the house needs life, to which he smoothly tells her that the house needs her. She says they can't go down this route, but he presses, telling her he needs her. Obviously, he is smitten by her. Some weeks pass as the scene shows David, alone in a house, with things that remind him of his wife, like the shoes he used to keep on the table that she used to get made at, while Diana took up a second job teaching a citizen class in order to keep herself busy. Much to the class's surprise, John exits outside of a rich vehicle and asks if he can sit inside the classroom. Diana asks if he would like to say something, and he flirtatiously, in front of the entire class, tells her that she is a beautiful and talented woman, and that he is crazy about her. After the class, he takes her to show her something. Bringing her back home, he shows her that he got dogs of every size for her. He plays music and asks Diana to dance, but she refuses, saying she should go. He tells her a story of 30 years ago. In it, he was on the subway after watching a movie, and he describes a girl that he found to be the most beautiful in this entire world. He explains the love he felt then, stealing glances at her. He finishes off the story telling Diana that he went back to the subway for 2 weeks hoping he would run into her, but he didn't. And to this day, he still thinks about her every day. He doesn't want that to happen again to him and asks for a dance again. They waltz on the patio romantically, and as they are saying goodbye, they share a kiss. Back where he is living, David stares at the pictures of Diana that he has taken and remembers all the memories of them together. But it appears he is still angry with her, as he tears every picture he has of her. The story takes a turn. It seems Diana has decided to be with John Gage instead. After some time, as it is raining, John and her get out of their car, with Diana clad in expensive clothing. David comes to see them, soaked in the rain, and advised John to change his emblem from a griffon to a cuckoo. The logic behind it being that a cuckoo doesn't have a nest of its own, so it goes and takes others' eggs. The symbol being that John stole Diana from him. The drunk David falls in a heap on the floor after attempting to punch John. Diana asks him to help her husband, and he gets dropped off home by John's driver. The next day, as David wakes up, he sees the statue of the dream house that he and Diana wanted. He gets a surge of motivation and applies for a job he is overqualified for, but nevertheless he is ready to do it. He teaches an architecture class enthusiastically, motivating the students with the example of a single brick. Jeremy comes to see David after class and informs him that Diana wants a divorce. If he doesn't deny it, he will get everything: the land, the money. He asks him where she might be. Diana and John are at a gathering for the auction of endangered species. There is an auction for an animal, a hippopotamus, starting at $10,000, and after pushing the price, John Gage finally buys it for $50,000. But before it is confirmed, there is a voice from the back of the gathering. David stands there, buying the hippo for $1 million. He gets congratulated and walks towards Diana, greeting her. John leaves them alone to have a conversation. As it starts raining, all the rich folks evacuate to take shelter under the umbrellas, as Diana and David sit there, lightly smiling at each other. Under the umbrella, David speaks his heart out to Diana. He tells her that he was afraid that Diana was right to want a man like John Gage, but now he knows that John isn't special. He's just more rich. As he says this, he signs the divorce papers in front of her and runs a hand over her cheek lovingly. He leaves. That night, John and Diana are driving back home in silence, until Diana tells him she wants to talk to him. John interrupts her, flamboyantly stating that he is very happy right now, further confirming it with his right-hand man, and continues to tell Diana that she is the best of them. Diana, confused at the statement, asks what that means. John explains that she is the best of the $1 Million Club. She says he told her he had never done this before, but John laughs and asks his driver to tell her how many women he has in the club worldwide. The driver, Shackelford, counts in his head and approximates a dozen women. They continue laughing about a certain woman who couldn't stop hiccuping every time she was around John. Diana stares at him quietly before asking Shackelford to stop the car to the side. Diana smiles at John and kisses him one last time as a goodbye. After Diana runs away to the bus, Shackelford asks John what this was all about. John tells him he wanted to end it, because she would never have looked at him the way she looked at David. This means that none of what he said in the car was true. There was no $1 Million Club. Then John really had never done anything of this sort. He made up that story so that Diana could think of him as a player and leave him. Diana sits on the bus and leans her head against the window, staring at the coin John gave her for the last time as good luck. Diana remembered that David proposed to her at Paradise Cove 7 years ago, and she wanted to go there to remember it and start over. As she walks up the bridge, she sees someone sitting there. She smiles with her eyes, recognizing the man, and sits opposite of him without him noticing. With a low voice, she asks him, "Have I ever told you I love you?" This is a question the couple used to frequently ask each other for fun. He looks behind him and answers no. They repeat the words they used to say to each other and smile, holding each other's hands. David puts his head against the low wooden wall in relief and closes his eyes in the end.